Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wavelength number 844.5. This is an artist talk with Charles Spearin and Daniel Monkman in advance of Wavelength 844, which is happening this coming Sunday, November 20th at 19 Bathurst. My name is Jonny Dovercourt. I'm the artistic and executive director of Wavelength. It's my pleasure to be here virtually with my good friends, Daniel Monkman, Wavelength concert curator, and Charles Spearin, who's performing next Sunday, as I mentioned, November 20th, at the next Wavelength show at 918 Bathurst. And you can find out more about the show on our website at wavelengthmusic.ca. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us. Welcome, folks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Hi, Daniel.
Hey, Charles.
Before we get started, for those who don't know, Charles Spearin is a member of Canadian independent post-rock indie music pioneers, including Broken Social Scene and Do Make Say Think, and has a couple of amazing solo albums out on Arts and Crafts. And joining us is Daniel Monkman, who is a member of indie, shoegaze, drone pop bands Zoon and Ombiigizi, who have albums out on Arts and Crafts and also Paperbag Records. And Daniel has also recently joined Wavelength as our artistic associate and concert curator for the upcoming year. So we're just going to chat a bit about the show coming up. So, and just music and life in general. So let's chat. I thought we could start out by talking about releasing music during the pandemic. Now you two both released music with two different projects over the last 2 years and a bit, which I think is a really interesting parallel between you both as artists. So Dan, so Zoon's debut, Bleach Waves, came out in June of 2020, which is sort of the early days of the pandemic. What was it like? What was that experience like for you, releasing your first album or your debut album with this project, like in the middle of lockdown?
Oh, it was I tried to stop it too, like before, like, as we were in New York and we were maybe like halfway through the campaign. I remember I was like, after all the management and industry people at pianos in New York were like, borders closing tomorrow, like everyone's going to the border, like you should leave too. And I remember during that drive back, I was like, I think this is gonna be for a really long time. Like maybe we should really consider stopping the campaign. And my manager at the time was like, no, we can't. We put a lot of money into it, and we're halfway through. We have to keep going. So from there, that was my mindset. My mindset was just like, we're gonna put this out. There's no like thinking, no like no regrets. I was just like, I gotta do it. I gotta do it. And so that's just the mentality that I had while putting it out. I wasn't trying to like set myself up to be like, oh, the reason why I did so bad is because of COVID. I was just, I just tried to do the best I could, and it was kind of difficult, trying to find new ways to like engage people. And by not playing in front of them was like really difficult. And it was my first release in 10 years, so I didn't really have an understanding of how things were going to be released anyways. So I was pretty fresh to all of it.
But I heard a lot about it from people during the pandemic, and in some ways, I think people were looking for new music and wanted to hear new things because they had more time on their hands. Like, do you think that almost in some ways was one of those silver linings?
Yeah, like after it had happened, like just the other month, I was thinking about it too. Where yeah, you're right. Like a lot of people were stuck inside, and I was grateful that people had a chance to listen to it, because I think, yeah, you're right. Like maybe if it was like the world was going, no one would have noticed this little niche sound, but I think when everyone was put on hold and no one was putting out records, or less people were, it stood out. So I'm grateful.
And Charles, your collaboration with Swedish violinist Josephine Runstein came out in August 2020, and its title was "Thank God the Plague is Over," and it was recorded pre-COVID. So, are you two clairvoyant or something?
Yeah, Well, at the time of recording the album, we recorded it in a tiny little chapel in northern Italy in the mountains, which we were both there together on a kind of a writer's retreat, invited by different people. It was a really magical place in the summer of 2019. And we basically just went into this little chapel. I brought my nickel harpa and she brought her violin. And we just went in there ostensibly just to listen to the acoustics of the place because we thought it might be a nice place to record. But as soon as we picked up our instruments, like this tiny little chapel, which is smaller than this room, like just sang back to us. And it was just, you know, such a thrill to play in this little place that we decided to go back every day and improvise there. And we recorded all of our improvisations. And the reason it's called Thank God the Plague is Over is because scrawled all over the walls of this little chapel it's graffiti, because this little area, or this area of Italy, had survived several waves of the bubonic plague. And at one point, 95% of the population was killed. So all these scribbles on the walls are people pleading for their lives. And it's very spooky and powerful. But then there's also this great big red X painted on the wall, which archaeologists have said was, it meant thank God that the plague is over. So it was a gratitude. So once the plague had moved on, they painted this as a way of thanking God for ending the plague. So we were just in awe of this idea of like how great it is that there's no, you know, global pandemics.
Not yet.
And how, you know, life is peaceful, and like it was just so powerful to be in this space that we called the album Thank God the Plague is Over. And then and it was also right next to the Lombardy region in Italy, where basically, you know, COVID kind of started. I don't know if you remember, like after it started in Asia, but one of the first Western spots was this town not very far from where we were just a few months later.
Wow.
So it was very strange. Yeah. And we were mixing the album and working on the album as COVID was spreading and taking over the world. So it was kind of wild to watch, but we stuck with the name because we thought it was curiously relevant in any way.
Oh yeah. Like, did you feel like you were sort of tapping into this like conduit of history that we'd maybe sort of forgotten about, and sort of these cycles of return?
Absolutely. And we also feel responsible for the whole thing.
Seems like you manifested it.
Yeah, it's like we pulled some demon out of this church.
That big X, yeah. It's like
That's right.
That's totally what I was suggesting. Yeah.
So wait, Charles, did you say it was you went there in 2019, and then how many months until COVID? How many, like, what was that?
We were there in July, and then it was, you know, March. No, I guess, March 2020 was when COVID really happened. So we were there just a few months before it happened. Yeah.
Wow. And you said the little town was like kind of where like a lot of those earlier outbreaks had happened. Man.
Well, like Lombardy was one of the early regions of like, I think Iran and Italy were the first two places where COVID really sort of spread outside of China.
Wow. And did you ever go back to that place that you recorded?
Yeah, I went back. We went back again just this last summer. We were there again in July. So 3 years later, we went back to the same little chapel and we improvised again, and we made a whole ton of recordings.
Oh.
And we have tons of new music. I mean, we're not sure what to do with it because we don't want to release the same thing again, but there's still some really beautiful moments in it we're not sure what to do with. But it was really wild to go back to that little chapel again after those years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Was the graffiti like all still there and stuff?
Oh yeah, I feel like we should have added some more.
Shit. That's too cool. Do you have photos of it too?
Yeah, I do. I can send them afterwards. But
Cool.
It's a really extraordinary little chapel.
Oh wow, so cool.
I meant to ask you two, how did you two meet? Because Charlie, I've known you forever, and like, I don't know, 25 years almost now, I think. And
Wow,
I think Dan, you and I met, I think, almost exactly a year ago at M for Montreal. last year
Oh, that was
when you were
last year?
playing. Yeah, when you were playing with Zoon. But how did you two meet?
How did we meet, Charles? I
I
think.
remember, well, Kevin introduced me to you, or at least he introduced me to your music when he was recording with you guys for Ombiigizi. He sent me some rough mixes, and I
Right.
was just like, "Oh, this stuff is cool." Um, and then you reached out to me a little bit later,
That's
because
right.
he played you my record or something at the studio, and then you reached out to me after that. So it was through our music that we connected for sure.
That's right. I remember now. I like going into this interview or this artist talk. I was listening to your record again and just remembering all the songs that I love from it. And remembering the first time I heard it with the Ombiigizi crew. We were sitting in the Bathhouse studio with Niles and Kevin, and Niles had gone to bed, and Kevin was like, "We're gonna sit down. We're gonna listen to Charles' new record because I think everyone should we should all hear it together." And Andrew and I, like Sunnsetter, were sitting on like the couch that faces the monitors, the little black couch, and I remember Kevin just blasted it, and it was like heaven. Like Andrew and I both like looked at each other and were like, "Holy shit, what is this?" We were because Andrew and I love that kind of stuff, and I don't remember exactly what song it might have been. Uh, City of Starlings. I think it was that song. I think, and like the really like kind of atmospheric second section of the song.
Yeah.
And from there, I was like, "This is an incredible sounding record." And I don't know if you had uh, mastered it yet, or maybe you did, and you were asking Kevin to listen to if there was any mistakes. I remember he like found some like little pops or something.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
did.
yeah. That was incredible. It would remind me of the first time that I heard Loveless almost, where it was
Wow.
it was like a wall of sound, and you're trying to figure out what parts are what, and not confusion, but that like trying to I'm so used to like hearing music, and I can identify so many different things quickly. But with music with people who are like composers and stuff, there's always like all these things that I love. So I remember just like feeling stimulated. That's what the word is, like
Mhm.
hearing all
Well,
the.
your music is like that to me too. I mean, when I listen to Bleached Waves, or particularly your latest EP, the sounds are so, like, there's so many amazing types of distortion, and they blend into each other like white noise scraping
Yeah.
against pink noise, and it's just like, I don't know what instruments, like, I know they're guitars, and I know, like, but it's just got this kind of like groundless, like completely oppressive, yet maybe not impressive, but enveloping, like, kind of distortion, which just, it's like a bath of noise, and I have no idea what sounds are creating what. And that's, I guess, we kind of connect on that level, where we like to blend instruments together in ways where you don't know what's making what sound.
Yeah, I think that's like the Phil Spector wall of sound that Brian Wilson was talking about. It's like you take a bunch of sounds and they make a new one. Like
Yeah,
take a bunch of instruments and blend them in together, and it makes like a new instrument or something.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I just saw someone posted an original 1991, November 1991 ad for Loveless from when it came out. For those who don't know the My Bloody Valentine final album, I guess not final because they did come back, but as far as we're concerned, it was the last record. But the tagline was, "They invented it. All you have to do is listen to
I
it."
love that. Oh my gosh. Wow.
But
Something
like
about.
seriously, MBV Loveless track came up in a mix today, and it still just sounds so crazy, that record. Like, it's just like these parts where it's just destabilized and slightly just like microtonally out of like pitch shifted out of tune, but just kind of like that seasick sound just really hits you still.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and your album is the same in that sense. Like it's got the same emotional reaction of just being trapped in this incredible, beautiful noise.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with I think with Kevin Shields and his shoegaze stuff, I think what was so different between him and Slowdive is that Kevin Shields uses a lot of open tunings, and I think with that causes some kind of drone,
Yeah.
and I think that's what really uh differentiates Slowdive's kind of style of shoegaze, that jangly Britpop stuff, compared to like experimental shoegaze like My Bloody Valentine. And I just remember always growing up, always being like, oh no, I only like MBV because I love the experimental stuff. And at the same time, I was using alternate tunings, and I think just naturally combining like say a First Nations big drum with like those open droney guitar chords is just like going back to that old, I guess not original shoegaze sound, but maybe like that earlier MBV style. And that's what I like to do, and I think maybe that's why it stands out a bit.
I
think
heard
it's
that.
time.
Go
I
ahead,
think it's
Charlie.
time too. I mean, that was like that album came out what 25 years ago. It's like
Yeah.
it's time for a bit of a revival, and you seem to be doing the best of it.
Yeah. Well,
And I was gonna say I heard a bit of it in Ombiigizi too, like especially live. It can, even though Ombiigizi is maybe more traditionally song based, it still has that really live you, like the dynamics really kind of pull you in this almost physical kind of way that really, really hits you.
yeah, I swear it's just the open tunings with the reversed reverb. Not a lot of people use it because it's so hard to like control, but when you do it, it has such a distinctive like emotional sound.
I gotta say that the best concert that I've been to in the last couple of years was easily seeing Zoon in your basement. You had
Oh
that
yeah.
basement concert,
Oh,
and it was like the first show. It was the first show I'd been to like after the pandemic was sort of opening, and you got everybody to test before they were allowed inside. So
Yeah.
everybody would show up and get tested, go for a walk, find out if they're positive or negative, and obviously everybody tested negative, and so we all went into this basement. Nobody wore masks, but it felt like suddenly we are going back in time to pre-COVID in this packed, sweaty basement, and it was just like such a good vibe, and your band sounded so good. I sat right up front, and it was just like I was watching everybody's feet doing the pedal dancing, and Andrew on the drums was killing it. Like it was just such an immersive and powerful show. It still rings in my ears as like one of the greatest shows I've seen in a long time.
Wow, that night was really special. I remember leading up to it, I didn't know if it was gonna work, and I didn't even know if I ordered enough tests. I was really like nervous about the whole thing, but um because Zoon is a business, I called Ontario Works, or I can't remember the place, and I asked for some test kits for my employees. And and they're like, okay, that's great. Just mark down how many employees you have, and we'll give you tests. So I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna have like 50 or 60 people. So I put down, I was like, well, I think we have about 60 like employees. And so then that day of the show, I went to go pick up the test kits, and apparently there was a whole procedure at the time where it was like scheduled timing to go in. And I walked in, and all I saw was like a bunch of bags for tests and some other stuff, like COVID stuff. And I remember asking the lady, I was like, hi, I'm here to pick up I have 60 employees, and I'm supposed to get some tests for it. She's like, oh yeah, your bags are right there. And it was all the bags that I had seen when I first walked in. I was like, whoa, like I was like, why are there so many tests? And they're like, well, we give you enough tests so you can test each employee at least 3 times, and we throw in extras just in case. I was like, oh my God. So it was like 60 times
60 times 3. Yeah.
times 3 or whatever, or
Or
times
more
4.
plus. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just had like all these bags. I remember like after that party, like people had found them, and they were like taking tests from it. Like it was pretty noticeable that people were at that time, you know, didn't have tests where they were given away at shoppers or whatever. Like it was straight up just people were like, oh, I need this. So I just told people to take it home, but
Good public service, Dan.
Yeah.
yeah.
It was good to be employed by Zoon for one night.
Yeah. Right. Oh, but yeah, what a great night. I was so grateful that you were able to come, and I was grateful that a lot of people trusted that it was just going to be like safe. You know, at that time, people were pretty scared still.
Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about the life under the pandemic. The plague, sadly, is not over. And we mentioned Ombiigizi earlier, which, Dan, is your collaboration with Adam Sturgeon from the band Status Non-Status. Was Ombiigizi, is this collaboration, like, is this also a product of the pandemic, or is it something you two had been talking about prior to this thing changing our lives?
I think we wanted to get together for a very long time because we were like, oh, we're both in Anishinaabe and there isn't really many people in the scene that are like us. And so we just, from like 2017, when I moved to Ontario, we just like kept in touch and would, you know, just support each other from afar. But the pandemic really gave us time to think about maybe other ways to push our music or just our vision or our culture. And so we just started talking about maybe doing something together. And Kevin Drew and I have a mutual friend named Naveen, and he worked for like Vice and knew some people in Apple Music who liked my music. So he was like, "Oh, I know Kevin Drew. Like you two should meet." And so he kind of set us up with an email thread, and we were talking back and forth. And then when Adam and I were deciding what we should do for the record, or if we should even like even get together, we just didn't even know. But in the beginning of it, I was like, I kind of know Kevin Drew, not really. I just met him like last week, but you know him. Why don't you like ask him if this would be something that maybe he would like join? And Adam talked to him that night, and the next day Kevin was like, I have studio time next month or in like 2 months. Do you guys want it? I'll come help record with you. And it was just kind of like that. It was just like so quick. We didn't even have songs recorded.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. You didn't even have songs?
No, like, and it was the next day that I wrote Mother Ogeen on the record, and I sent it to Adam and was like, I think there's a good hook in there. Like maybe we should use this as just like something. And then and Cherry Coke I had written maybe like 8 months prior to that, but in the studio I dug it. I was like, I didn't have a pop melody at the studio, and I started freaking out one evening. So I went through my voice memos until I could, like, I was listening to, I was like, oh, that sounds like a nice melody. I was like, oh, it's not working. And then I came across Cherry Coke and I was like, wow, I was like, that kind of has a nice melody. And so I showed it to Adam while we were outside, and Kevin and everyone was doing all these like tribal drumming things in the next room. And there was a lot of pressure for me to find that one song, like any song. And when we both listened to Cherry Coke, he was like, we have to do that song, the next one, that this would be good. And that kind of just like, after that, we just kept writing stuff in the studio. But there was just basically like one song that was written before that.
And your first live show was when?
I don't know. I was broken social scene, I guess.
That was the first live show, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was our first live show at Massey Hall.
At Massey Hall.
Yeah.
So great.
That was crazy.
You guys were good.
Yeah, it was you too. That was so much fun. Like incredible, Charles. It was so crazy to.
Yeah, it was a great night. I was really thrilled that happened.
Me too. I got to watch you front roast. It was really cool. It was really nice. I got all the way to the front to watch.
I was right up front for you guys too. I don't even know that, but I was up at the front.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Oh shit! I didn't know that.
You guys are making Massey Hall sound like a DIY basement venue.
Yeah, totally.
Gotta
That's
support
fine.
the other band, man.
Well,
Yeah.
I like Massey Hall without the seats. It's fun that way. Like you can kind of create a different vibe. Like because the all after all the the renovations they did, they took out the seats or made them removable. So when we played there were no seats, so you could just kind of squish up to the front. Like it's a,
I didn't know that. I didn't know that, Charles. Is that
yeah,
I knew that they went through renovations, but I didn't realize that it used to be just only sitting.
yeah, it was all seats before. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Holy moly. Okay, cool.
So Charles, let's talk about your, can I ask you about your other pandemic record? It was your long-awaited sophomore solo album, My City of Starlings, which came out in August of 2021. And then this really seemed like a product of the pandemic as well, even though it was 12 years after the Happiness Project which was your 2009 debut. Was this record something that had been in the works for a long time, or did COVID kick it into high gear?
Uh, COVID definitely kicked it into high gear. I had a few of the ideas I'd been kicking around for a long time. In fact, I have a hard drive filled with music that I've been writing, since I don't know, 2017 or something like that. And I just kind of work away at it. Sometimes it's a bit like sketching, like I'll get a new plugin and I'll say, oh, well, what can this thing do? And I'll write some music for it. So I have this collection of half-finished songs. But then when the pandemic hit, I was invited into a song a day club. Like some of the people from the castle retreat that I was at, plus a bunch of other people. We had this song a day. Like basically, the idea is to just sort of get over yourself, write and record a song every single day for a week. And if you don't do it, then you're kicked out of the club. It's like so you just have to do it. If you hate it, you got to hand it in anyway. And like there's some heavy cats in this group, so it was like a high pressure situation, really fun. And so I recorded a song every day for a week, and we did the song a day club I think 3 times. So I ended up with 21 sketches of songs and
Wow.
so I kind of went through those and added to them and fixed them up a little bit. But most of the songs on this record came as a product of that song a day club.
Mm.
So there was a lot of spontaneity in it, not a lot of complicated arrangements and that kind of thing. It was more like kind of an emotional release.
Mm.
And it's nice to not be able to overthink things, which I was doing a lot of before. Like some of these songs that have been sitting on my hard drive, I would go back and tweak them relentlessly until I hated them, basically.
Yeah.
And this song a day club was kind of a cure for that. It's just like, hey, that sounds good, just leave it. So the album essentially came from these like spontaneous recording sessions. But then I can't help myself. I went back in and overdubbed a little bit and invited in a bunch of friends. Like it's a solo album, but there's a lot of guests on it who are like dear friends and incredible musicians. So it's definitely, I wouldn't say polished, but there's more ingredients to it to make it a bit of a spicier stew.
Wow. Was Three Voices was that one of the songs from the camp?
The song, it was, yeah. Originally it was just one note sample of a woman going, ah! And then I took the sample and I bent it and then I harmonized it and then I made this sort of sculpture out of bending notes and I really liked it. I actually made a 45-minute version of it, which has never been released. But it's just so peaceful to listen to these voices sort of bend up and bend down. But I trimmed it down, to 5 minutes or whatever. And then I gave each individual part. There are three different parts. I sent them all to Robin Dan from the band Bernice.
Yeah.
And she sang them for real. Like she sang them all and sent them back to me. So it's actually right now it's a combination of this sampled voice and Robin Dan. So it's
Oh.
called Three Voices because there's 3 harmonies, but there's actually 6 voices, 3 Robins and 3 robots.
Wow.
But
So
but
cool.
I really like the way it turned out. It was mostly just experimenting with what's the term, sort of glissando in voice. So going from one to like like these super slow bends and seeing if I could get them to come together. So
I
was
like,
really,
I like that the way what you described, because I really like I like cello a lot, and I noticed cello has that kind of like sometimes with, especially when the way that Michael does his experimental shows and he bends it almost, he makes it kind of sound like almost like a pedal steel sometime, like you just like bend it in and out, and I like how pedal steel is like that too, like that kind of stuff.
Michael Olsen, he's great. I love his playing. It was cool to find out that he was playing in Zoon. I didn't know that until I saw you guys live.
Yeah, he's amazing. And did you say was there any songs that, I'm just trying to think of did, so you said some of the record was stuff that you worked on for a really long time, but then there was how many, what do you think of, is there a split in the record, or do you think it's like
let's see, there's the one song that I know that I've been kicking around for a long time. I think it's called Rutting Season. I changed the name so many times, I don't know what they ended up being, but there's a song called Rutting Season, which is this little guitar riff, which I thought was kind of fun, like a little sort of sweep up and sweep down, and I just like playing it. I played it over and over again on guitar, and I recorded it a bunch of times. And it's just like, I just like the way it feels in my hand to play this riff. So that one I know is an old song. I've had that one going for a long time, but I think maybe all the others, or most of the others, came from this Song a Day Club. But then I brought friends in to play on top of it. Then there's cello too. Anne Bourne played cello on the record. She's sort of a Toronto institution of deep listening cello. She's wonderful.
Oh wow.
Oh, yeah, I know Anne, and from like I knew her from actually going back to Change of Heart, but yeah, she performed a lot at the Music Gallery when I was there, and Anne actually helped bring Pauline Oliveros to town, I think in like 2009 when I was programming at the Music Gallery. So yeah, Anne's a real force in the deep listening world in Toronto.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then Karen Ng is another person who was really helpful on this album. She played we would go for walks together, and then I'd send her tracks and she would play on top of them at home and send them in to me, and then I would take her saxophone and pitch it down an octave or put it on tape and slow it down, and like it was just fun to in sort of COVID style remote collaboration where you send files back and forth. So there was some of that for sure. Karen was really helpful, and Robin, and there's a lot of people that helped on the record. Julie Penner, who's an old plays in Dumix, I think, and used to play in Social Scene. She played on the record too, which is great. So there's strings
and the drummer too, right?
Oh yeah, well Dave Clark played on it for one song, and then Sarah Thawer, who is like an absolute internet sensation. She's TikTok like star. TikTok, and I've been following her for the longest time on Instagram.
Her videos are crazy.
I was like, oh my God, she's from Toronto. Like, how do I not know her? So I reached out to her when I was doing a house concert many years ago, and then she got back to me and she couldn't do it. And then suddenly she became super famous. And then I sent her one of the songs and said, hey, would you, like, how much would you charge, or would you play on this? And then she didn't respond for months.
Oh my gosh.
She was like a superstar. And then she just wrote back to me saying, yeah, no problem. I'll do it for $250. And I'm like, okay. And then I sent her the files. And then within 4 hours, she sent it back, played note for note, absolutely perfectly what the fake drums had done, but made it so much better, so much livelier. It was just wild. And that's how we connected. And then I invited her to play with Broken Social Scene in Massey Hall.
Yes.
Amazing.
I remember that, seeing that. That was pretty emotional part of the set. because
Yeah.
I knew who the person was
Yeah,
too.
yeah, she's incredible.
Did she play on the Sympathy and Vegetation?
No, she plays on, again, I can't remember the names of the songs, but I think it's called Sometimes It Hurts to Be Alive.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's the one's in a weird time signature.
Yeah, yeah, that one is
Complicated.
weird. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because you played a lot of the drums, but you said that you went back in after and kind of edited and tightened
Yeah.
things up a little bit.
Yeah, I played drums on half the record, but like you said, like I would play it as best as I could, and then I'd go into Pro Tools and cheat a little bit by nudging beats over here and there because I'm not the best drummer. I like coming up with drum ideas, and I
Yeah.
love playing the drums, but it's, you know, I'm not the best timekeeper in the world.
No, I know what you mean exactly. I know what you mean. It's always like, um, I'm just good at basically songwriting, and then it's pretty simple, and then I just let really good people play over top of it, you know.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what my show, like, let's get back to the show that's coming up. That's basically what I'm doing. I'm like, I've brought in all of my amazing musician friends. Like, I can't
Wow.
believe that I've collected, like, I have a dozen people coming to play with me for this show, and they're
Awesome.
all fucking incredible. So I feel like this amazing sense of like relief that I have all this support for this show, but at the same time, like, they're my compositions, and I'm totally nervous about, like, you know, collecting it all together. Um, but yeah, it's really a chance for me to showcase all these incredible friends that I have. So
That's so
I'm pretty
cool.
thrilled about that.
Andrew was saying that he might be playing with you too on a song, maybe.
Yeah, I invited him to do the end of My City of Starlings, that whole droney outro
Oh
part.
yes,
So he's gonna
yeah.
play his loops.
That's a perfect song for Andrew to play on. When I listened to it,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is like, you know, whenever I go to Andrew's and we're maybe working on a film, we're always like improvising, make a bunch of cool sounds, and I was like, that's a perfect song
Yeah,
for Andrew to play on.
that's what I thought. I mean, if he's there and he's got his guitar and pedals all set up, I'm like, why don't you play with me? Like, we should do something. So I was like going through the set list to see what he would suit best, and for sure that song he's gonna do with us.
I can't believe you're gonna play that song. That's so incredible.
We'll see.
Seriously, I can't I cannot wait. You don't know, like, for some reason something happened to me during the pandemic where when I like a album a lot and I get to see it live, I it's like I don't know even know how to describe it, but it means so much to me. I think maybe because before the pandemic I never saw a lot of live music. I think it might have been like 7 or 8 years where I didn't see like a live band before, and only
Oh.
listen to like pet sounds or see change. And like I saw Beck one time at Deer Lake Park in Vancouver, and that kind of broke the cycle up a little bit. But before that and after, I hadn't seen a band in a long time. So like to hear a record on in the pandemic and then now maybe to see it live, it's really special. I'm really excited for that.
And for the benefit of our friends at home, Andrew McLeod, who we mentioned, is AKA Sunnsetter, who's opening the show coming up November 20th for Wavelength at 19 Bathurst. And Dan paired these two acts together, Sunnsetter and Charles Spearin. And Dan, do you want to talk a bit about what inspired this lineup pairing?
Yeah, when taking on the curation, I just thought about Toronto and my influences before getting to Toronto, and hearing about Do May Say Think and Broken Social Scene, and like reading about these bands in magazines and hearing about them on the internet, and thinking of like I'd always made like it always like made me think of Toronto and Ontario, and it always seemed like such like it might as well have been like the moon from where I grew up in a small town, Selkirk, Manitoba. Like thinking of Winnipeg was like to the moon, and Toronto might have been like to Jupiter or something, just like so far away. and so when I got this curation going, I wanted at least my first show to kind of, I don't know, itch that thing that I always had for many years. And what gift did it like to have, now knowing Charles like on a personal level, and Andrew too, and working with Andrew for the last like 5 years, and hearing him always play, Charles music and Broken Social Scene, and I just, for me, it just seemed like such a beautiful match, not just musically, but just historically. I just felt like having these two things come together either was gonna like, open a portal to hell, or like be just a beautiful evening. It was like the singularity of having these two artists together. I was like,
Well, you already know I have a history of opening portals to bring
Yeah.
plagues on the planet, so
And
be careful.
Yeah.
Charles, you talked a bit about all the guests that are joining you, and I think you mentioned to me it's going to be something of a variety show. Without spoiling anything, can you give the people out there an idea of what to expect this Sunday?
Well, it's basically like a bit of a stroll through my albums. Like there's going to be some stuff from the Happiness Project, and then some stuff from my City of Starlings. My band for that is the Uplifters, the Uplifters, which is Jason Kennemy on piano, Dave Clark on drums, who's a legend, and Michael Herring on bass. So the three of them are a band called the Uplifters, and I've done a couple of shows with them, and they're dear friends, and we get along and play great together. So there's them, and then there's the horn section, who play with Do Make Say Think, and sometimes with Broken Social Scene, which is Michael Barth, Karen Ing, of course, David French, and then I play trumpet sometimes too. So, for some of the songs, there's going to be a trio. Some of the songs, it's just going to be one or two people, and then some songs, it's everybody. And then to do some of the music from Thank God the Plague is Over, I'll be playing with Laura Bates, who plays in lots of bands. She plays in Voller, who is my favorite heavy metal violin band.
Yeah.
They're incredible. And she's just wonderful to work with. I've worked with her on a couple soundtrack things. And she's just awesome. And we did one show together, the two of us, playing the songs from Thank God the Plague is Over, with Jared Sales doing visuals for it.
Wow.
And he's an animator, and he does really incredible stuff. So he's going to be coming as well. So we're going to have these sort of chapters of different albums where sometimes everybody's playing, sometimes it's just me. And then I'm going to do this little kind of semi-theater piece. It's not really a theater piece, but it's this kind of, it's like, basically I'm just going to take the audience on a drive to some strange places in a story. And then bring everybody back at the end. So it's a bit of a variety show, and a trip through all the different albums I've made, plus this strange theater thing. Cool. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a singer-songwriter, so when I get invited to play, I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And then I end up like taking on way too much. But I'm excited, and I think it's all gonna hold together. So I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Oh, it sounds amazing, Charles. It sounds like anything you do will just be like, even just with you by yourself, probably would have just been so beautiful too, So I think adding these other people is just gonna make it so special.
I hope so.
Yeah, well, I hope everyone out there can make it. Tickets are moving fast, so do not delay. All right, that's me taking my promoter hat off. And before we wrap up for the night, what's coming up for your respective musical projects? I know Social Scene's playing next month at History.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then there's a couple people who happen to be on the screen here with me, who've managed to drag the corpse of Do Make Say Think to the top of a mountain and attached electrodes to the toes and fingers, and the lightning is striking. So it could be that this corpse gets reanimated, but I'm not sure at that point right now. But it seems like the monster of Dumex, I think, maybe reawakening. I don't want to say too much about that, but that seems to be in the future.
For those who have stayed to the end of this artist talk, you've been rewarded with a teaser for 2023.
Wow, 2023. Oh,
Yeah.
Right?
oh my gosh, 2023.
I know we're getting into the mid-20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
like
plague years continue. And Dan, how about you? You got any other new music in the works that you can talk about?
Yeah, I just recorded an album with the Medicine Singers and Jonathan Gad and Lee Ronaldo too. It was a really interesting recording session, and it's coming out I think like maybe next October.
Cool.
Amazing.
Through Mothland, and there's a new label that's kind of partnered with Joyful Noise, and it's called Stone Tapes, and it's like it's run by Jonathan Gad and a few people, but it's basically to showcase like a lot of indigenous artists from like America. And so I just like by chance got asked to be part of this recording session, and they end up liking me, so they just asked me to stay longer. But that's the newest, and I have a new Zoon record out too, and already kind of jumping in on other collaborations, you know, just trying to like stay busy. And yeah, just trying to stay busy.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing you both and everyone out there this Sunday, November 20th at Wavelength 844 at 19 Bathurst. Go to wavelengthmusic.ca for tickets. If this was an in-person talk, this is where we do a Q&A, but I think we'll just wrap up. Any last words, Dan or Charles?
Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me to do this, Dan. I don't generally do stuff unless I get asked. I rarely go out and like book shows and that kind of thing. So it is nice to be asked to be part of this thing, and I really appreciate the opportunity to go through all my worries and doubts and like get over them and bring a band together. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Hey, no worries. Thank you for saying yes. You know, it sounds like what you're saying is pretty enlightening, you know, like going through like the doubt and then coming out. It's good for the soul, you know.
It is. Yeah, it is. And it's dark out there. You know, this is getting dark at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
They're taking our sun.
Yeah. So having a gig to look forward to is a good antidote.
Yeah. That's true. Thank you so much, Charles, for playing the show. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, well, you're grateful as well. Thanks to both of you for your time, for all the music, and for all your thoughts. And can't wait to see everyone next week.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Johnny.
Oh, my pleasure. Have a good night.